A global money reset is looming. This can be gathered from the latest statements by Larry Lepard. There's also a new ZDF report that's actually not too bad, talking about a Bitcoin craze and how this Bitcoin frenzy came about. Of course, we're going to take a look at this report. We're also looking at Thailand, where the Prime Minister has declared a US dollar Bitcoin bull case. And they're going to check if Bitcoin will be introduced as legal tender in Thailand. So ultra bullish. But we're jumping right into the ZDF report because there's often very, very negative coverage from the public media. But here we have another example of a relatively neutral to maybe even positive piece. There were also a few points of criticism that we'll take a look at shortly, but check it out for yourselves.
Basically, in this store in Frankfurt, you can just look for and of course buy the right shoes. So far, nothing special, until you want to pay for the shoes. Whoever wants to can do it with Bitcoin, stored in a digital wallet on your own phone.
Then you enter the amount, scan the QR code, and in no time at all, you've got the money and we're happy. And the customer too, because they have exactly the rate at which they might have invested their Bitcoin profits into running shoes.
A marketing gimmick. According to him, the future. Donald Trump a few weeks ago in a New York restaurant. He paid for this burger with Bitcoin. The first transaction with Bitcoin by a president of the United States. And now Trump has a goal. The USA will become the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin supermarket. Superpower of the world. He'll make it happen. Bitcoin isn't an official currency, and contrary to what those symbolic images might suggest, there are no actual Bitcoin coins, just highly encrypted codes. Unlike the euro, Bitcoin isn't issued by a government central bank. Cryptocurrency was created as a vote of no confidence against the established financial system. In 2009, Bitcoin stayed in the shady corner for a long time with high price fluctuations included. Little by little, though, it's making its way into the mainstream, climbing to gigantic heights this year. Driven by Trump's election victory, one Bitcoin for US dollars.
Primarily, investors are betting on a crypto-friendly Washington, meaning a government under Donald Trump that is fully committed to Bitcoin and the like. Settle down.
And that's the kind of music that's currently playing, and especially the imagination, that's got crypto fans in total ecstasy. Because Trump is even thinking about a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the USA. During the campaign, he benefited from big donations from the industry, and as an investor, he's financially profiting from the surge. Bitcoin is a tool in his fight against the establishment. The question remains, does Bitcoin even have any value?
Basically, it's an incredibly volatile instrument. I'm intentionally not calling it a financial instrument that needs to be handled with great caution because there's no real economic value behind it, no equity stake, and no interest expectations.
Bitcoin remains what it always was, a high-risk bet, this time backed by arguably the most powerful man in the world, and driven by the hope that there is still someone out there who believes in the value of these codes.
So this has started really well here. It simply reports how Bitcoin can be used and so on. But I don't get why, in public media, they always have to cut in some critic at the end who just spouts absolute nonsense. Here they go again saying, yeah, Bitcoin is worthless. They even frame it at the end like, who would still buy such worthless tokens or who would still buy such worthless Bitcoin? They have to find some idiot or something who would buy that. Here they go again saying, yeah, Bitcoin is worthless. They even frame it at the end like, who would still buy such worthless tokens or who would still buy such worthless Bitcoin? They have to find some idiot or something who would buy that. In the end, it's mentioned that it has no real value. I'll just throw out the counter question. What real value does the euro have, or what real value does the dollar have? Those are just, let's say, some wild fantasies that are just issued by some central bank, and then they just say, okay, you have to use this money. This is now your forced currency that we're giving you. So that's basically always the topic with all these experts who just tell you, yeah, it has no real value, but that's just not true. I can't say it often enough. I said it yesterday too, value is subjective. If you can see value in Bitcoin, if it has value for you, that it is something that is resistant to censorship, that it works 24/7, that it has an absolute limit and cannot be evaluated all the time like central bank currencies, then that means to you that it has value for you personally. And if that weird financial expert doesn't get it, then I say he should just buy Bitcoin for 10 million or 5 million or whatever. I think that's just crazy right now. On one hand, we've got all the Bitcoin hype, and on the other hand, all the haters are coming out. Those who either missed the boat or bet on the wrong assets, whether it's real estate or gold, I don't know. Anyway, that's basically the problematic part that I see right now. It's also mentioned that it's a high-risk bet and that it has no interest expectations. So the high-risk bet is really a question of whether it's actually that high risk. Because we don't have a third party, we don't have a central bank, we don't have an issuer or anything like that. And we also don't have real estate risk where the property could just blow up or the location could become undesirable or whatever. This means that Bitcoin is already an asset that actually has relatively few risks. Of course, there is still a 2% risk that someone may have overlooked a mistake somewhere in the code, but the risk is very, very small. And that's why I see the criticism here as completely irrelevant, and you can totally overlook it because the biggest risk nowadays, and I say this every time, I can't say it enough, is not having any Bitcoin at all. Oh, and what's also cool is this whole thing about it not having any interest expectations. So when we talk about interest expectations, it basically means it doesn't have any cash flow, which means, for example, a bond just throws off interest, and you can say that's like the cash flow of the bond. Or for example, it's the same with a company. You can say, okay, the company is now distributing some profits, has distributions, dividends, and that's a kind of interest or something like that that you get for it. You don't have that with Bitcoin, okay, fair point, but you don't have that with gold either. Then you would have to say that gold is a really bad investment. And besides, what do I want with an interest rate of 3% when I can get an annual return on Bitcoin, I don't know, averaging 40 or 50%? I'd much rather have an asset that's increasing by 40 or 50% a year, without dividends, without cash flow, but I'm still seeing massive appreciation. By the way, I'm here in El Salvador, just walking to the beach. We'll check out the beach situation in a bit. It's really cool walking down the street here. There are Bitcoin signs everywhere. It's pretty wild. It's definitely crazy here, being in a developing country and then walking down the street, seeing people just chilling on their phones, and then you spot trash bins with Bitcoin logos on them. And then something really crazy happened here. It looks like Thailand is now massively opening up to Bitcoin. There's a new report here that Thailand is considering tasking the Ministry of Finance to look into the introduction of Bitcoin, with plans to use tourist centers like Phuket as sandboxes for Bitcoin spending and usage. So creating sandboxes like, for example, also here in El Salvador, for example, here I am right now at Bitcoin Beach. Let me show you this real quick. I need to flip the camera. All right, here you see it. Just got to get rid of those weird things. Here I am at Bitcoin Beach where, for example, there are Bitcoin meetups. This is kind of like a sandbox, or actually, it's more like a sandbox here. That means you can pay with Bitcoin everywhere here. Let me show you this. Over there is the main house. They also regularly have Bitcoin meetups here. I'm just going to run up there for a moment. You can already see Bitcoin symbols here. Check it out. Here's the main house. It's actually closed right now, which means they also have Bitcoin workshops and stuff like that. Here you can see Bitcoin Beach again, Bitcoin logo, and there are even more Bitcoin logos here. It's already evening now, so all the shops are closed. But if you look here, Bitcoin accepted, you can pay for everything here with Bitcoin. So a lot of the Bitcoin movement actually started here in El Salvador, and they obviously want to do something similar here in Thailand. So I definitely welcome that anyone who opens up to Bitcoin and stuff like that. I mean, I came to El Salvador for Bitcoin among other reasons. And if more hotspots like this one in El Zonte pop up, for example, in Thailand, anyone can do that. I mean, we did the same thing at our Bitcoin hotel. We created a Bitcoin hotspot in Germany, and a ton of international Bitcoiners came out for it. You can really see that Bitcoin is a magnet for bringing people together in one place. People who are motivated, inspired, have cool ideas, and just want to do something awesome. They're all about freedom, and that's why it's really, really great. But something even crazier happened here. Thailand isn't just focusing on Bitcoin. There's also the former Prime Minister, let me show you him, and he's throwing out this bullish prediction, saying that Bitcoin is going to rise against the US dollar. It's crazy that we actually have people here in Thailand saying, okay, Bitcoin has massive potential. And he's throwing out this bullish prediction, saying that Bitcoin is going to rise against the US dollar. It's crazy that we actually have people here in Thailand saying, okay, Bitcoin has massive potential. We want to make Bitcoin a kind of legal tender here in Thailand and create the next Bitcoin stronghold. So we're seeing more and more bullish people in politics, whether it's in the USA or in Germany, where there are also more politicians slowly starting to open up. And the reserve strategy could, in my opinion, trigger something really massive here. And even in Thailand, it's already here. Here in El Salvador, the Bitcoin standard has been in place for a long time. I also pay a lot with Bitcoins. I keep saying that. I definitely like to buy more so that my Bitcoin holdings don't shrink. But what's happening here right now is definitely something to be welcomed. And now check this out. Larry Lepard, who originally was a gold bug, is one of the few gold bugs who actually gets that Bitcoin is relevant and important. Because most gold bugs, or a lot of them, just get stuck on their gold and can't seem to connect the dots and understand that Bitcoin is actually the superior gold. Bitcoin is kind of similar to gold, but with a lot of advantages. And check out what he has to say about a global money reset regarding Bitcoin and how this whole thing is going to play out.
If we're in a sovereign debt crisis, and I think we are, and if we're going to see a lot of inflation, I think we are, and if we're going to have a monetary reset, there are going to be real winners and losers, and you're not going to get a do-over, You're not going to get a do-over. It's not going to be like, oh man, I missed out. Maybe I'll, say 20,000. I mean, it's like we could wake up one day and the government could say, we're going back to a gold standard and they're going to set the price of gold at $20,000. You either own gold and gold mining stocks or you don't. They're going to skyrocket just like Bitcoin. I mean, the US could say we're going to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve and the price of Bitcoin could triple just like that. If you don't have any, you won't benefit from that. So there will be, because of the risk of monetary debasement and the fact that there will be no do-over, I would just strongly encourage all of your listeners to allocate some of their wealth into things that the government can't print. The government can't print gold, they can't print silver, they can't print Bitcoin, and they can print dollars. And in my opinion, they're going to print a ton of dollars.
So you heard it, he is warning about a global monetary reset, and of course he has not said what will trigger this reset. Probably nobody even knows. It could be E.G. Hyperinflation or currency cut. War could lead to problems without Bitcoin or gold. A money reset could occur. Overnight, a government might return to the gold standard, causing gold to skyrocket or switch to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's price could triple overnight. If you don't have any gold, what if a money reset happens? A government returns to the gold standard, causing gold to skyrocket, or switch to Bitcoin, causing it to explode. Bitcoin's price could triple overnight, he says. And if you don't have any Bitcoin, you'll be left out. That's why he's pleading. It's a request. He says, please get into Bitcoin, explore this topic. You don't need a massive allocation, but consider putting 1 to 3% of your wealth into this for a likely scenario. And if you don't have any Bitcoin at the start, as already mentioned, then you're just out of luck. And that's why he's almost begging people here. It's like a plea. He says, hey folks, please get into Bitcoin, look into this topic. You don't have to have a huge allocation, you don't have to go all in, but at least consider putting 1, 2, or 3% of your wealth into something like this for a scenario that seems very likely to be coming our way. Lord Larry Lepard, Larry just isn't sure about the timing yet. He also once said that the dollar will implode, or explode by the year 2030, however you want to put it. And that's why he says you need something they can't print. And what can't they print? They can't print gold, they can't print silver, and they can't print Bitcoin. And Bitcoin will probably benefit the most from such a global reset, especially if we're talking about a Bitcoin reserve and stuff like that. As he already mentioned, if something like that happens, then the price of Bitcoin is just going to skyrocket, and by then it'll be too late. So you need to buy Bitcoin before something like that happens. You basically have to buy insurance before the house burns down. If the house burns down, then it's no use taking out insurance and saying, oh, sorry, hey, I would like insurance for the event that happened 2 weeks ago when the house basically burned down. No, you need to get the insurance before the house is burning down. By the way, check it out. I'm here at the Bitcoin beach. Let me show you this. It's really cool right back there at sunset. So definitely remember, you should always get the insurance before the actual disaster event happens. That's always the thing. When the Morris Hoft and the wannabe hobby economists tell you that Bitcoin isn't a hedge against inflation and isn't a crisis protection, they show you some charts where there's a crisis, and then Bitcoin might have dropped like 10 or 20% after that crisis scenario. But you didn't see that before the actual event. Bitcoin had risen by 80, 100, or even 200%, and even after that crisis, after a small pullback, it recovered very quickly. You can't see that in this chart, and that's what's so insidious. So you need to secure yourself before the crisis, always before the crash. And you have to look at the whole thing neutrally over a long time frame, not like Maurice Hofton does, picking out the cherries on a short time frame, looking at the daily chart and saying, oh look, Bitcoin isn't a hedge against inflation, it dropped 10% here. If you actually decide to invest in Bitcoin or even gold or silver, but definitely not in fiat currencies. If you decide to invest in Bitcoin, I highly recommend checking out the links below. I'll give you a link to a Tracer hardware wallet below. This is the easiest way to secure your Bitcoin independent of the state, independent of the bank. Here, you're completely self-sovereign. You can easily store your Bitcoin securely with a Trezor hardware wallet, which I think is one of the best hardware wallets on the market. You can also connect it directly with 21 Bitcoin, the easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe. Here at the Cold Bitcoin Hotel, you can even get up to 20% off the fees, and you can set up a car transfer here too. That means as soon as you buy Bitcoin at 21 Bitcoin, it'll be transferred immediately to your Trezor hardware wallet. So you really have no third-party risk at all. Neither 21 Bitcoin nor Trezor can screw you over because the whole code is open source. That means you can check for yourself if there are any viruses, Trojans, or any kind of malware or whatever on the hardware wallet. So I absolutely recommend 21 Bitcoin and Trezor. I'm putting a link down below, and then you'll be all set. Now let me know what you think about all the turbulent statements from ZDF and everything else. I'm signing off from El Salvador. Until then, peace out